Joining us now for a brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr.
The
Rubin.
lady in white.
In white today. To the lady in orange, good morning.
Yes,
how are you doing?
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And good morning, Rufai. That's me.
How's mommy?
She's fine, thank you so much. Oh my God, you're fast becoming her favorite here, I have to say. All right, team, well, let me tell you what's happening around the world. Well, there's still no ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas on the first night of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's latest visit to the White House. But Netanyahu said peace, broad peace, is possible under the US President Donald Trump's leadership. That's as he nominated Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize. Let's take a listen.
Mr. President, the letter I sent to the Nobel Prize Committee, it's nominating you for the Peace Prize, which is well-deserved, and you should get it.
Thank you very much. This I didn't know. Wow. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coming from you in particular, this is very meaningful. Thank you very much, baby.
Thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you. It's a great honor.
And I think we can work out a peace between us and the entire Middle East with President Trump's leadership. And by working together, I think we can establish a very, very broad peace that will include all our neighbors.
Well, the men spoke to reporters while seated at the long table inside the Blue Room, surrounded by top White House aides. Now, during their meeting, the men celebrated U.S. strikes on Iran. Trump compared his decision to authorize airstrikes on Iran to former U.S. President Harry Truman's decision to drop atomic bombs on Japan during the Second World War. Netanyahu, he said that the United States and Israel were working with other countries who would give Palestinians a better future, again suggesting that the residents of Gaza could move to neighboring nations, something Palestinians have staunchly rejected. Now, despite protests against the Israeli leader outside the White House, Netanyahu is expected to stay in Washington until Thursday and has meetings planned with Vice President J.D. Vance, Speaker Mike Johnson, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Now, U.S. envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, will join the ongoing Israel-Hamas peace negotiations in Doha this week. Russia's former transport minister, Roman Starovoyt, has been found dead from a gunshot wound to the head just hours after Russian President Vladimir Putin fired him. Now, 53-year-old Starovoyt's body was found with a Makarov pistol inside a car parked in an elite Western Moscow suburb. The gun had been given to him as an official gift. Now, Russia's investigative committee says he appeared to have killed himself. The Kremlin gave no reason for his dismissal when an order signed by Putin to remove Starovoyt from his position went public on Monday morning. But there had been reports the former minister was blamed for a series of mistakes, including the 500 cancelled and 1,500 delayed flights across Russia, which were caused by Ukrainian drone attacks over the weekend. Now, before his appointment in May 2024, Starovoyt was also the governor of the Kursk region on the border with Ukraine for 5 years. And speaking of Kursk, 3 months after becoming minister, Ukrainian troops crossed the border into Kursk in its biggest foreign incursion into Russian territory since World War II, and were only pushed out earlier this year after fierce fighting and widespread destruction. At least 11 people had been killed and more than 500 arrested across Kenya during anti-government protests, marking the 35th anniversary of the Saba Saba or 7/7 protests when Kenyans demanded a return to multi-party democracy after years of autocratic rule by then President Daniel Moi, or Arap Moi. Kenyan police blocked major roads, used tear gas and water cannons on protesters, who were mostly youths who were already enraged over allegations of corruption, police brutality, and abduction of government critics. Now, similar demonstrations over corruption and these issues did take place as criticism had descended into violent clashes just last month. Now, on the 24th of June, Kenya's prosecuting authority did charge 6 men, including 3 police officers, with the murder of Albert Ojwang, a Kenyan blogger who died in police custody last month. Well, those are your stories. I'd love to hear your thoughts before we move on to the papers.
Femi, it's a very funny world we live in. I never thought there would be a day in my life that a man that an arrest warrant has been issued for war crimes called Benjamin Netanyahu is the one nominating President Trump for a peace prize. You see, that's the hypocrisy of the world we live in. After both of them decimated Iran, bombed Iran, and they threw all their bombs out there, to now humor all of us in all of this, Benjamin Netanyahu had the nerve, the unmitigated temerity to joke with all of us, because that's a joke. But anyway, they're trying to couple together a peace deal that is going to favor Benjamin Netanyahu so he can come with the trophy that I brought them back home. It's never going to be in the interest of the Gazans. It's never going to be in the interest of... Anyway, I'm not a fan of Hamas, so Hamas had not held elections since 2006 in that region. It's a problem. But as I blame Hamas, also, the question we should ask Israel is, they are in control of the West Bank, but why are they still killing people in the West Bank? And that's the hypocrisy of Israel. So they can continue with their talks and continue deceiving themselves. And when they are done deceiving themselves, they should let the world know. As regards the Russian minister, yes, he's been named because, you know, the Ukrainians were very tactical with their drone attacks to prevent airlines and everything. And they've also talked about the fact that he was governor of Kursk region. But what really happened in Kursk region, I was reading Novaya Gazeta. Novaya Gazeta was a paper that was set up, you know, I think Molotov, he was one of those that won the Nobel Prize for Peace with Retsa of, you know, Maria Retsa. And the paper, the Filipino journal, and the paper was heavily funded by, what's his name, Gorbachev, before Gorbachev passed. And Novaya Gazeta was saying that this might really be tied to a 15 billion corruption scandal while he was governor of that region. So him leaving the position now might be because, I don't know, I'm just trying to put links together, might be because he feels that since he's no longer a government, there's no nothing that will cover him for that billions of ruble corruption scandal. So probably that might be a motive to take in his life, but I don't have all the facts. Maybe. But it was based on Novaya Gazeta's reporting, which is one of my top sources when anything comes out of Russia. As regards Sabasaba, the truth about Sabasaba is, yes, 35 years ago, people have had enough of Daniel Moye. I mean, Arab just means the son of Moye. Yes. So people have had enough, and they went out to protest. The funny thing was the fact that Raila Odinga was part of those that were protesting in Sabasaba. Today, he's with Ruto.
Yes.
Ruto is Daniel Arap Moye's anointed political son. Daniel Arap Moye brought him in when he had this Kanu for Youth agenda in 1992, and he also went further to ensure that he got his first parliamentary seat in 1997. So it is sad that Kenya keeps going around a cycle.
Definitely.
And the police does not know how to manage this problem. And these are the sad realities. And that's why people keep getting killed. And the Gen Z are standing up to them.
Thank you, Rufai. Go ahead.
You know, it highlights this conversation we were having yesterday, although we made light of it, but this rotation of political elites.
Yes.
Because this is what happens. You have, if you look at Kenyan history and the presidents and so forth, most of them are related in one way or another, and, you know, 1 or 2 degrees of separation. So what you've had in Kenya for the past 50 years is, in essence, rotation of power around the same circle of elites over and over again. You have a perpetual opposition leader in Raila Odinga, in that he's opposition when it's time for elections, then he claims he's lost the election, then he still does a handshake with the government and still joins them. So this is why I feel the Gen Z, the youth of Kenya, are deeply frustrated because they've realized that nobody represents them. The deputy president who was recently sacked, and you know, we saw the unceremonious way in which he was sacked, and they took away his security detail, his vehicles, everything almost instantly. Gachagua, for last week's protest, said that, oh no, he couldn't come out because the young people said that they don't want us to be part of their protests. And I say, okay, so how are you going to bridge the gap between the political class and the young people of Kenya? But what I saw yesterday was just disgusting. People being whipped, people being shot, dead bodies lying around. It was horrible. And this is, this is to just reach sort of a crescendo to what we've seen with regards to people disappearing over the past year, politically related kidnappings and tortures and so forth. It is just so devastating to see that this William Ruto, who came in as an underdog, has now become this. Just to sum it up, when we look at excessive power, excessive use of power, the situation in Russia is still question marks all around, especially like you've pointed out, this man's allegiance, this man's history, precedent as the former governor of Kursk region. His predecessor, governor, who is also Minister of Transport, Smirnov, is currently indicted as well. And between them, he was supposed to testify, I think, this coming week as well. So people are saying, well, last week, one of the top Navy commanders, Russian Navy commanders, was also killed in Ukraine. So people are saying, is this a Putin regime taking out one of its own? Or did this man just realize that he's reached the end of the road and there's nothing left for him?
Question. Thank you, Bimbai. Dr. Rubin,
Okay,
before we go on to papers.
Make brief comments. Yeah, yesterday, when you brought this same topic about the fact that Egypt and Qatar will be mediating another round of meetings on the ceasefire issue between Hamas and Israel, I made a point that nothing will come out of it for one reason. The reason that Israel doesn't want to shift on what I defined yesterday as the three missions. And also, Hamas does not want to shift, principally because Israel is saying to Hamas that he must evacuate the Gaza Strip, and that Israel is committed, as the finance minister, the national security advisor, and the religious Zionism party of Israel says that, look, they must get rid of Hamas in Palestine. However, the big subject now is that Netanyahu yesterday, so in other words, the meeting yesterday yielded no result, as predicted. Now, so Netanyahu goes to White House and he meets with President Donald Trump. Yesterday also I outlined what the agenda would be in that particular matter. However, the story you have brought this morning is that Netanyahu is saying, President Trump is a good candidate for the Nobel Peace Prize.
That's what he said.
Now, the irony of it, I would prefer to use the word irony, is that this is a man who is like a leader of a mob, who has been accused of genocide against the Palestinians. He's the one recommending the president of another country for the Nobel Peace Prize.
Correct.
So the irony is writ large. However, he carried the letter, he gave to Trump, and in that farcical canter, you know, they told us that Netanyahu is recommending
Donald Trump.
However, Donald Trump, this same Netanyahu, I hear that he got into the White House through the back entrance. It wasn't as if he was given the kind of reception. Now, this same Nobel Prize, it's not Netanyahu who is the first person to recommend it.
No.
The government of Pakistan recommended Donald Trump. Also, a senator recommended him, saying, this man, for helping us to disgrace Iran, he deserves the Nobel Prize. Another parliamentary leader in Ukraine in November last year recommended Trump for this same Nobel Prize. Now, this same President Trump wants to be in the category of Nobel Prize winners. There are other American presidents before him who have won it, and he says, I've provided peace in Congo, I've provided peace in Somalia, and all that. The question is, does he deserve it? Now, as for the Russian minister who died, well, the issue is that there was an issue with aviation in Russia. Ukraine,
drone attacks over the weekend.
Drone attacks. There was also the issue about, nuclear emissions, and he, as a minister, was at the center of it. He was sacked, and then all of a sudden, we hear that he has committed suicide. But an investigation is in place. We don't know whether he committed suicide out of pride, or whether indeed Sovoti, I think that's his name, committed suicide or not.
Agreed.
So these are issues. As for Kenya, President Ruto has issues with the Gen Z in that country. That's the main thing. The Gen Z are saying he should leave. And all of this has to do with taxation. The taxation riots last year and the killing, or rather the death of Edward Ojiang. That's his name. So, and celebrating the anniversary of all of that coming together. But what it means, it's about the relationship between the state and the people. The state has a responsibility to serve the people and to protect the people and to work in their interests. I think that's where President William Ruto would seem to have lost it. And that's what has led to this cascade, of reactions and conflicts.
Okay, let's take a look at the front page of This Day. This Day leads with Aviation Minister Festus Keyamo inaugurating Enugu Air, a state-owned airline he described as being ready for full operations. The carrier was unveiled by Governor Pete Umba, whom the Aviation Minister described as one of the best governors in Nigeria. The airline's maiden flight destinations are, of course, Enugu and Abuja. Now, this week's edition of The Advocate by Onikepo Braithwaite takes a look at the essence of slogans and how they are rarely used or put into practice. So examples of slogans referring to the judiciary, since this is a legal insert, include the judiciary is the last hope of the common man and justice delayed is justice denied. As ever, a very interesting read. Moving on to the Daily Independent, it leads with President Tinubu reaffirming his administration's commitment to transparency and fiscal prudence, declaring that savings from the fuel subsidy removal are being reinvested into key sectors to drive inclusive development and rebuild public trust. To The Guardian, it reports the consequences of poor infrastructure on building a competitive industrial sector. The consequences are weighing heavily, they say, on the prospect of leveraging a weaker dollar and the broader US economy to strengthen the value of the Naira. And the front page does show how the Naira performs against a basket of other currencies. Now, Nigeria's export drive could be in danger, says the front of the New Telegraph. That's as Donald Trump threatens, as we discussed yesterday, an extra 10% tariff on countries trading with BRICS nations. The latest BRICS summit, which featured, of course, Nigerian President Bola Tinubu, drew to a close on Monday in Rio with a call for greater global governance. To The Leadership, which leads with the Kano Emirate crisis taking a new turn after the 16th Emir of Kano, Emir Muhammadu Sanusi II, accused supporters of the 15th Emir of Kano, Alhaji Aminu Ado Bayero, of attacking his Kofa Kudu palace and removing one of the gates. To the United Kingdom, the Mirror reports that the victims are furious as the FBI and the US Department of Justice closed their probe into Jeffrey Epstein, finding no so-called client list. Now, before we go, let's take a look at this. Well, on this day in history, today is the 8th of July, on this day in history, 1949, the Prohibition of Mixed Marriages Act was passed in South Africa. This act banned marriages between people of different racial groups, specifically marriages and sexual relations between whites and non-whites. It was one of the first pieces of apartheid-era legislation to be passed following the rise of Afrikaner National Party, and it was repealed 36 years later. That happened on this day in history.
Yeah, that's a big one. It's one that touches me personally,
yes,
but we'll get into another day. But it was developments like this that later sent people like my father to join the war for liberation. But thank you so much, Adefemi Akinsanya.
All right.